Okay, joining us now is Steve Goreham. Steve is a speaker and author, a researcher on environmental issues, and a columnist. He's the executive director of the Climate Science Coalition of America, a non-political association of scientists, engineers, and citizens dedicated to informing Americans about the realities of climate science and energy economics. Now, Steve is the author of 3 books, sold 100,000 copies, which are now in print. He holds a BS and an MS in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois and Illini. He's got an MBA from the University of Chicago, Milton Friedman's old school. He has more than 3 decades of experience in Fortune 100 and private companies in engineering and executive roles. He's an engineer. Sounds like my good friend Denny Black in Chesapeake. He's an engineer. Those engineers, they're a funny bunch. They really are. They like math and stuff. They're not us political commentators. In fact, Denny Black the other day, I couldn't start my battery for my Saturn. So he comes over, he's got this box. First of all, anybody comes over with a box, it's like a big toolbox. It's like, what the hell is that? I don't own a toolbox. I don't do tools. I don't hang a picture. I can't change a tire. I have no idea what to do. That's why I subscribe to AAA. And when I grew up in New York City, my father didn't do that either. We called it super. And we didn't do any of that stuff. He comes over with this box. I'm like, what the hell's in this box? He opens it up. He's got all kinds of tools in there. Well, he opens up my hood. And he's like, oh, here's your problem. And there was corrosion on one of the battery bolts. And he cleans it up, unscrews it, takes it. Then he checks it out, says, oh, your voltage is fine. Start it up, go, you're good to go, spend no money. Guy knows what he's doing. He says, look, I'm an engineer. I get all this stuff. Steve's an engineer also. Now, he's going to present global warming and sustainable development, separating fact and fiction, a program covering sustainable development, climate change, and energy with implications for public policy. And I'm going to let him tell you all about it. Without further ado, Steve Gorman. Steve, good to have you, man.
Hey, John, great to join you. Hey, you know, it's really sad today. Usually engineers are pretty down to earth and they look at the facts and the data, but now we have a whole lot of engineers accepting the ideology of climatism, the belief that humans are causing dangerous global warming. All these big engineering companies, my old company Motorola and Apple and Google and a lot of others that all think that humans are warming the planet dangerously. Very strange situation.
Well, are they?
Well, the data shows that Earth's temperature that the climate is changing. The climate always changes, but it's dominated by natural factors driven by the oceans, the weather, and ultimately the sun, rather than your SUV or your light bulbs.
We've got about 15 minutes. What is the deal here with climate change? Because you got so many scientists saying that climate change is real, global warming is real. It started with, of course, Al Gore and that whole thing. But if you say it's not or you question it, you're called a climate denier, a Neanderthal, a whack job, a denier of science. There's always a political objective here. What are these people after?
First off, the world jumped to a conclusion. The theory of man-made warming is plausible. We do have a greenhouse effect. Greenhouse gases in our atmosphere, like carbon dioxide and methane, do capture infrared radiation coming out from the Earth, and they do tend to warm the planet. But when you start to break things down, and if you look at data over the last 20 years, you find that the theory is not correct. The climate models are wrong. The dominant greenhouse gas in our atmosphere is water vapor, not carbon dioxide. So water vapor and clouds play almost all of the effect. And so we've now had 20 years of flat global temperatures. And the theory is incorrect. But nevertheless, now things are being pushed forward. Many groups have used the theory of man-made warming for their own advantage. The United Nations, environmental groups, some of the now big industries of wind and solar. Yet the data and the empirical evidence doesn't support the idea that we're causing dangerous global warming.
All right. Now, what is the political objective of those that are pushing this climate change? Right? There's got to be an objective.
If you take the United Nations for example, the United Nations has had 3 long-term objectives. One is to redistribute wealth, and they wanted to set up a $100 billion green climate fund as part of the Paris Accords and get wealth to go from the United States and Europe to the poor nations of the world. And they can claim that the industrialized nations, the modern nations, are causing dangerous global warming, so we must pay this money to equalize things out. Second, they've thought that the United States has been consuming too much for years. They call it overproduction and overconsumption, and they want to cut that down. And third, they want to set up world government. But we have all these groups, the United Nations, European communities, environmental groups, that are using the theory of man-made warming to further their own ends. I mean, if you look at the World Wildlife Fund, for example, you can go online and you can adopt a polar bear for $55. And they send you a certificate and a picture of a bear and all that. But the thing is, we have 3 times as many polar bears now as we had 50 years ago. So the polar bears aren't endangered. Nevertheless, the theory is great for raising money and furthering other objectives.
All right, so does it go towards the kind of, at the end of the day, they're looking for some kind of a one world government order? I mean, is that kind of the ultimate end game here?
That is the United Nations objective. I think it was Jacques Chirac who said that the Framework Convention on Climate Change was the first example of a bona fide world government. The Framework Convention on Climate Change was a big treaty set up by all nations to control global temperature. So that is one of the objectives, but there are many others. And the other thing is, many people had built their careers on this. Again, the theory was plausible. The world jumped to conclusion, and we have deans of sustainability universities and environmental desks at newspapers and corporate vice presidents of sustainability. We have many, many things that have grown up around this theory over the last 30 years or so, and now it's very tough to go back and say, never mind, the theory isn't working, let's do something else. People just don't work that way.
All right, so what is your objective in being able to influence people's view to reality?
Well, I go out and talk to corporations all the time in groups, and I talk about misconceptions. And climate change is the biggest. We live in a world of superstition. We had people demonstrating in Hamburg at the G20 just a day or two ago, demanding that our world leaders control the climate. And many of these people believe that if you change your light bulbs, you can stop the oceans from rising, and if you build wind turbines, you can make the hurricanes and storms less severe, and if we all drive electric cars, we'll save polar bears. I mean, this is really nonsense stuff when you think about it. There is no evidence that supports any of that. So I talk to companies and groups about these misconceptions and bring them the real facts in economics.
All right, makes sense. We're with Steve Goreham. Steve is going to present Global Warming and Sustainable Development, Separating Fact and Fiction, a program covering sustainable development, climate change, and energy with implications on public policy. Steve, when and where? Tell everybody where it is.
Well, it's scheduled to be, it's a meeting hosted by the Tidewater Coalition, 7 p.m. on Thursday the 13th this week in Chesapeake at the Military Relocation Team Center, 1421 Kempsville Road, Chesapeake, Virginia. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to put up about 100 slides and talk, and I've got about 8 video clips. I've got Al Gore with a clip, and Jimmy Carter, and all sorts of different folks talking about how we're destroying the climate and we're running the world out of energy resources and we're over-polluting the planet. None of those things are true if you look at the data. So it'll be a lot of fun, and I invite all those folks that believe in the theory of man-made warming to come as well and challenge what I'm having to say. So
it's Thursday, July 13th. What time is it?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. And where is it again?
Chesapeake, Virginia, at 1421 Kempsville Road. Punch that into your GPS. I hope to see you there, John. It's going to be lots of fun.
All right. Now,
and by the way, we have an upheaval underway. We have the new Trump administration and many things going on around the world portend an upheaval, the failure and the demise of climatism. And we actually see cutbacks all around the world, including Europe, where investment in renewables is down 50% from what it was. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Trump, as you know, of course, just withdrew from the Paris Climate Accords,
right,
throwing a huge rock into that happy climate pond.
Right.
And we have an emperor has no clothes situation, and maybe a few other nations will reverse their decision on this.
All right, Steve, this ought to be interesting. I appreciate you coming out here to our neck of the woods here in Virginia. Again, Steve Goreham is going to present Global Warming and Sustainable Development, Separating Fact and Fiction. This is going to be on Thursday night, this coming Thursday, coming up July 13th, 7 o'clock in Chesapeake at 1421 Kempsville Road. 1421 Kempsville Road. I tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to put this on our Facebook page right now, 1421 Kempsville Road, so you can just go to our Facebook page, John Fredericks Radio, if you don't have time to jot it down, and it'll be there. And Steve, it should be very interesting, a lot of fun, and we appreciate your coming out for us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, John.
All right. Steve Gorman, again, on Global Warming, Thursday, this coming Thursday, July 13th, 7 o'clock, 1421 Kempsville Road. I'll be right back.